Welcome to our Friday night question and answer program. Please go ahead with your call.
My question is in Daniel chapter 7, verse 27. And the question is, who are the people of the saints of the Most High?
Well, let's take a look in Daniel 7. This is all in relationship to a vision. And it says in verse 19 that I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Now, that's an important statement because it tells us what's going on when we compare it to Revelation 13, and the beast comes up out of the sea. And in verse 1 is described, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So we saw the beast in Daniel 7, verse 20, had 10 horns. So this is the same beast that's in view in Daniel chapter 7. And then verse 5, and there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And that 42 months would be the duration of the Great Tribulation, which worked out to an actual full 23 years. And then it says in verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So the beast does battle or makes war with the saints. It says in Revelation chapter 20, verse 7, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. And that statement is synonymous with the beast coming up out of the sea. It's the identical thing that's being taught. And then it says in verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. So again, the target is the camp of the saints. And the camp of the saints was the corporate church. And so Satan did battle with the churches and congregations, and he overcame them because it was given to him by God. God turned over or delivered up the corporate church. And where were the elect? They were within the churches. They were still in the churches at that time. It was the camp of the saints. And so God picks up that terminology and he speaks of the beast overcoming the saints. And it's here also in Daniel 7. I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Overcome, prevail means to be victorious. And that is always the character. Whenever we read about the Great Tribulation, the character of the Great Tribulation is that those that profess to be the people of God lose. The enemy wins during the Great Tribulation. That is, he overcomes, he prevails against the camp of the saints. Now, the Lord reserved the latter rain, and God ultimately was victorious as he called his people out of the churches, but basically with the command to the people of God to depart out of the congregations. That was an acknowledgement that the corporate church is lost. It's sort of like a city, and it is typified by earthly Jerusalem, a city that is compassed about and the enemy is doing battle against that city. Well, the city lost, it was defeated and turned over. That's why King Nebuchadnezzar, who typifies Satan, defeated Judah and took Jerusalem. He took the city and he burned much of it. He burned the temple. He took the Jews captive, all to illustrate in a historical parable what God did to the church when he loosed Satan and turned the churches and congregations over into his hands. And so we're reading about that here in verse 22 of Daniel 7. It says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. That is, verse 22, when the Ancient of Days came, that's Judgment Day. That's May 21, 2011, after the 23-year Great Tribulation period. Judgment is given to the saints of the Most High, and the saints possess the kingdom, because Christ took the kingdom from Satan. Then, in verse 23, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing of time. Now, verse 25 is telling us of Satan's assault against the church, where he speaks these great words against God, the Most High, and it served to wear out the saints. And it all is related to the lies that Satan, who is the father of lies, used to infiltrate the churches, to overcome the churches where they believe the lie. God sent them strong delusion so that they would believe the lie over the truth. And that would go on or continue for the times, and dividing of time. And in this instance, that's referring to the complete duration of the Great Tribulation. Then in verse 26, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Now, it's interesting that it says the judgment shall sit. Sit. Why does it say that? Well, because, again, after the Great Tribulation period, the Ancient of Days comes in judgment. Christ came. He's already come to begin the process on that date of May 21, 2011. And how does the Bible describe Christ's coming? Well, one way is seen in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 10. It says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. That's what it says. The judgment shall sit. And the judgment seat of Christ started again on that date at the end of the Great Tribulation period. Now, we've known this for some time, but we haven't put 2 and 2 together. We haven't really thought about this. But to sit in the Bible, or to take your seat, is a figure of speech that represents ruling. Ruling. When we read that we must all appear or be made manifest before the judgment seat of Christ, that's really referring to the judgment rule of Christ. The time period in which he is ruling over the unsaved inhabitants of the earth, as we read in Revelation chapter 19, verse 15, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. Again, we could make a substitution there and say, he shall take his seat with a rod of iron. He will rule in the day of judgment. And in Revelation 20, I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it. Again, ruling is in view. We are living in the time period in which Christ is ruling. He has taken his seat upon the judgment throne, and kings rule on their throne. Christ is ruling all of the wicked of the earth, but he's not ruling in a benevolent way. It's not a rule designed to help. It's not for the welfare of its subjects. Christ's rule is with a rod of iron, and the rod of iron is to punish. It's to afflict punishment or to mete out punishment to the unsaved inhabitants of the earth. That's the purpose of the rule of the Lord Jesus Christ. And we are appearing before that judgment seat, before his rule in the world at this time. And so the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And again, Satan had his dominion taken away at the end of the Great Tribulation. And then in verse 27, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Now, Satan came against the camp of the saints. He overcame the saints. And really, the ones that Satan overcame were professed saints. You know, the Bible speaks and recognizes, the Bible acknowledges that there are people who take the name of God but are not true believers. And so there were people of Israel, yet there were Israelites that did not bow the knee to Baal, 7,000. So there are Christians, but then there are true Christians. There are believers, but there's true believers. There are people that identify as saints, but then there are the actual saints who are made holy by the saving work of the Lord Jesus Christ as their sins were washed away. And it is those saints that are in view in verse 27 that, as it says, the kingdom and dominion and so forth shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High, and it's an everlasting kingdom and dominion.